lesson 2 aspect, we're going to be looking at coastal landforms. So first, there are two aspects where we look at landforms as a result of coastal erosion. Remember the erosional processes which we call the HARs: hydraulic action, abrasion or corrosion, attrition, then solution or corrosion. Now, there are three major erosional landforms, which are headlands and bays, cliff and wave-cut platforms. Then we look at caves, arcs, stacks, and stumps. These are the three major landforms we're going to be looking at and how they are formed. Now, the first one is headlands and bays. Now, formation of headlands and bays. Headlands and bays are formed around discordant coastline. Now, discordant coastline are coastlines that are made up of different types of materials, like you have alternate bend of hard and soft rock. So in this case, they are formed from differential erosion. Differential erosion here is when you have alternate bands of hard and soft rock, you find out that the hard rock is not eroded as fast as the soft rock. So soft rock is eroded faster. So that's the differential erosion. Now, so formed from differential erosion, where you have alternate bands of hard and soft rocks along discordant coast. Now, hard rock resists erosion, while so it will now protrude into the sea to form a headland, while soft rock is eroded easily. So soft rock will now form a bay. So that's the headlands and bays. So originally, this is how it is. So you have soft rock, hard rock, soft rock, hard rock, soft rock. So as the incoming wave hit this coastline, you find out that differential erosion will now take place, where the soft rock will now be eroded faster than the hard rock, forming what? A bay, while the hard rock will protrude into the sea, forming a headland. So next is a wave-cut platform. Now, you find out that its erosion, it occurs at the cliff first. Now, so erosion of the cliff by hydraulic action, abrasion, solution, attrition. So a wave-cut notch will now be formed. Now, undercutting leading to the formation of an overhang. Now, once there is a collapse of the overhang, because the weight can no longer be supported, the cliff will now retreat, or the cliff or the headland will retreat. Now, so smoothing by wave to form a wave-cut platform. So now, this is what is done here using this diagram. First, this is the wave, and this is a cliff. Now, the thing you need to know is that this whole stuff here is the cliff. But however, this is the top of the cliff, while this is the base of a cliff. So as the incoming wave, as the wave is coming, it attacks the base of this cliff. Then it begins to erode the materials that are found here at the base that it has contact with, forming what? A wave-cut notch. Now, this wave-cut notch will now lead to the formation of an overhang. So this is an overhang now. Why? Because it no longer have support here. So once there is no support for it, it will now collapse. It will erode and collapse. Once that is done, it will now form what? A wave-cut platform. So the platform, this wave-cut platform, is this point here. This smoothing point at the base here that is formed because the cliff that was there earlier has collapsed. That is what it is. So now, how does this look like in a real-life setting? So here, they might give you a question like this and ask you to describe what is happening. Now, if you look at this, you find out that here, the wave will attack this base. This is the top and this is the base. So once it attacks this base, it will now form a wave-cut notch here. So this point is a wave-cut notch. Now, you find out that this rock here, this part of the cliff is hanging. So that is now the overhang. This will now collapse over time, leaving behind here a wave-cut platform. So this is how the characteristics of it look like. Now, if you are asked to describe the characteristics of a wave-cut platform, is, you see, this is the cliff. This is where this cliff is initially. Now, because this wave have been attacking the base of this cliff, leading to the formation of wavecut notch, then the cliff collapsed and the materials eroded into the sea, leaving behind this point called the wavecut platform. So one of the major characteristics is that, as you can see here, there are solid rocks from this image. Now the wavecut platform is flat. See, it's flat, meaning here we look like more like a gentle slope. Now it may also contain, or it contains small, can you see, small loose rocks here at the base. That's just some of the features you can pick out from this diagram. Next is the formation of, look at the formation of, where is this? Sorry. Okay, good. This is the third erosional landform. So, which is the formation of cave, arc, stack, and stump. Now, cave, arc, stack, and stump. Now, they are all formed as a result of the same erosional process. So, quickly, one will definitely lead to the other. So, if you remember class, this is how it's arranged, class, because some question they'll ask you, once you know how it's arranged, it's quite easy for you to describe how it is formed. Now, so we have class here. Now, so it's formed from erosional processes such as the 4 erosional processes we listed earlier: hydraulic action, corrosion, corrosion, or attrition. You should check lesson 1 to know their individual meaning. Now, once this acts on a headland, it acts on a headland, you know, a headland protruding to the sea. Now, so the next thing is erosion along line of weakness. So if there's a line of weakness here, as you can see, so erosion on this line of weakness will now form a cave. Now the cave gets larger because of the same erosional process. So back to back caves, so it gets larger and erode back to now form an arc. So you can see through the headland because it has eroded on both sides to form an arc. Now, because there's an arc here, you find out that this part will not have support. So the roof of this arc will now collapse. So collapse of the roof of an arc will now leave a large standing rock called a stack. Now, wearing away of the stack, once it gets weared away, it retreats, get eroded, it will now leave behind this small structure here called a stump. That's just it. Now, we have coastal depositional features. How are they formed? The depositional features are beach, spits, and sand dunes. So, quickly, development of beach. Now, beach are developed by constructive waves. They are formed from constructive waves. So stronger swash and weak back swash. So once the strong swash, the back swash, let me just go through it this way. Formed by constructive wave where you have stronger swash and a weak back wash. Now the back wash don't have sufficient energy to take the material back. So the materials such as sand and shingles are deposited. So the material build up over time to form a beach. That's just it. Now, these materials are moved as a result of longshore drift, which is the zigzag movement of materials. You can check lesson 1 for detailed explanation of it. So prevailing wind move materials up at an angle. Now, it creates a gentle slope which reduces the speed and causes more sedimentation of materials. So deposition also occurs within sheltered bays or area of refractions to form beach. So what this means is, the swash, the incoming wave is strong, which is swash. Now, because it is strong, it brings along with it a lot of materials. These are the materials now. So the backwash is weak. So it does not have sufficient energy to carry this material back into the sea. So this material tend to deposit here. Now, it keeps depositing over a long period of time to form what? A gentle slope and to form a beach. That is just it. And this movement of material where you have strong swash and weak backswash is what is referred to as constructive waves. And this beach can also be formed by refraction and also through the movement of this material by longshore drift. Next is formation of spits. Now, strictly, if you are asked in an exam to describe the formation of spits, the first thing you should describe is longshore drift, because spits are formed from longshore drift, and also deposition of materials around shallow, sheltered areas. Now, once this material gets deposited there and it builds up over time and protrudes into the sea to form a spit. Now, if the coastline changes direction, you find out that that is when the deposition of that material will now form a hook along the area to form a hook, a spit, leaving behind salt marshes. So that's just it. That's just what you need to write in an exam. So if you look at this diagram here, let me use this diagram to explain it. Then you can actually pause the video to read through the content written here. Now, prevailing wind bring wave in at an angle. So the wave come in at an angle because of the prevailing wind. So the swash comes in at an angle and it brings up materials up this coast. That process is called the swash. So the swash comes in at an angle, while the backswash move back the material vertically into the sea through the backswash. Now, if this will now cause the material to move in a zigzag movement manner, now if this continues until it now gets to a shallow, calm, sheltered area, so materials will now begin to be deposited. So materials deposited in shallow, calm water to form a spit. So at this point, the material gets deposited and build up into the sea. Now, so the spit is now curved when the wind, this incoming wind, now changes direction, possibly start coming from this angle now. If the wind start coming from this angle, you find out that instead of this spit to continue moving this way, it will now curve inwards. And once that is done, it now leaves behind this area, which will now develop to form a salt marsh, becomes sheltered salt marsh deposited area. And that easily occur when the coastline changes direction. So this deposition of material is also easy, because if this material keep moving this way and it gets here and the coastline changes direction, you find out that the material deposition can no longer change direction with the coastline. Instead, it continues to deposit the material forward this way. So this area where the coastline changes direction, it's usually sheltered and shallow. So the deposition of materials easily continues inward into the sea to now form a spit. It's just as simple as that. Now, development of sand dunes. How is sand dunes formed? So this is quite easy. If you read through this, you get the concept. So wind blows from the sea. So normally wind blows from the sea. As the sea is there, wind blows from the sea. Now, this wind, as it blows from the sea, it picks up what? Materials. It picks up particles, it picks up sand. And as this wind blows, there are sand in it as it keeps moving. And it now get to where there is an obstacle, like there is a plant, there are grasses. What happens is it will now drop. It will now be deposited at the base of this obstacle. So drop them around an obstacle, pebbles, a plant. So what will happen is that the dunes will now increase in size due to more buildup of sand and deposition. So once there is buildup of sand, the pebbles, the plant, this will now stop the sand from moving because of the wind that comes with it. It gets deposited, and this deposition will now build up over time to now form a sand dune. And however, this sand dune can now be colonized by vegetation and grasses. So the more vegetation that colonize the area, the more deposition that will take place. Now, next will be the formation of coral reefs, and what are the conditions that need to be met before a coral reefs can be formed. This comes out as a 6-mark question. So first, for there to be coral reefs, there must be warm water. The water must be warm water or sea where the temperature is above 20 degrees Celsius. So warm water with temperature above 20 degrees Celsius. The water should also be shallow, so that means it's not too deep. It should not be more than 50 to 60 meters deep. The water should be free from sediment. That means it should be clear to allow light to penetrate, so that the plants and the organisms that are there will be able to photosynthesize to make food. Now, it should have plenty supply of oxygen in the water, so the water should be unpolluted, and there should be enough supply of plankton that will help in photosynthesis to make food for the organisms there. Then there should be lack of strong current. This is all you need to just write for the conditions. Now, first, it should be warm. It should be shallow. It should not be deep. It should be within 50 to 60 meters deep. It should be free from sediment. It should be clear. It should allow so light can easily pass through it. There should be plenty oxygen. Why? Because the organism there, they need to breathe. It's simple. And there should be plentiful supply of plankton, which is the major source of food there. And there should be lack of strong current. Now, the types of coral reefs. So types of coral reefs, there are three types. Your syllabus, there are three types. We have fringing reef, we have the barrier reef, and we have the coral atoll. So this is called coral atolls. Now, what are the difference between them? This is quite straightforward. In fringing reef is when the coral is attached to the coast. So if this is an island, so here forms the coastline. So once the coral is attached to the coast, it's called a fringing reef. Now, a barrier reef is when the coral is separated by a lagoon. So we have it's usually offshore and is separated from the coast by a lagoon. So here it should be like the lagoon, and this here is the coast, and this is the coral. So the coral is not attached to the coastline and is offshore and is separated by a lagoon. Then we have the coral atoll. In the coral atoll, there are roughly circular surrounding a central, a deep central, how will I put it, island. So here, if you want to look at this in a 3D format, you find out that you just have the water. If this is, you find out that it will just be in a circular form here. It's roughly circular, but you will not see the island. But in this case, you find out that you can see coral here, then there's a highland here, and in between these corals, you can see another one here, it's not attached. But in this case, you see the island and you see the corals attached to it. Okay, lastly is mangrove swamps. Now, so what are the conditions required for the development of mangrove swamps? So simple. Now, this mangrove swamp or salt marsh are formed behind a spit, if you remember. So usually they are behind a spit. You can check back. I explained formation of a spit earlier. So they are usually behind a spit, and so what are the conditions? What need to be kept in order for it to be formed? Just like the same way we have conditions for formation of corals. Now, one is the water should have high salinity, so the amount of salt should be high. It should be between high and low water mark, so it should have a large tidal range. Next is the water should not, it should be water higher than 20 degrees Celsius in coolest month. So the temperature is in the coolest month is above 20 degrees Celsius. Now, it has a seasonal temperature range that is lower than 5 degrees Celsius, so it has a small temperature range, and it has a gentle wave action. So the sheltered coastline do not have a lot of high tide waves. It should be gentle waves, and also it usually form around sheltered coastline where you can also have things like deltas also. So it's usually an area where fresh water, so fresh water from inland, so you can see this is a fresh water from inland coming in like more like a river. Now at this point it meets the coastline here, so forming which is called a marsh or a mangrove or salt marsh, which is referred to as usually brackish water. Okay, so these are the conditions for formation of corals. Now, what are the characteristics of mangroves? Sorry, condition for the formation of mangroves. And what are the characteristics of mangroves? So if you go to a mangrove vegetation, what are the characteristics of this vegetation? First, we know that mangroves are areas with high salt content, so they have high salinity. They are areas where temperature should be at least more than 20 degrees Celsius at the coolest mode. So the kind of plants and animals that should be found there are animals that have developed adaptive abilities to these conditions. So the characteristics of these plants there is that they grow between high and low water marks, which is one of the features for the formation of mangrove in the first place. Now, it is usually evergreen trees, so there is no period where they are dry or they are always green. They are salt tolerant because the area have high salt content. They have what is referred to as area roots. So you can see it from this diagram. These are area roots here. Now, area roots are extra roots from the branches. So take note. They are extra roots from the branches that is exposed to air. They have salt filtering roots, so the roots can filter out the salt to absorb the fresh water. Now they have salt excreting leaves, and they have prop roots. So you see the prop roots here, which are extra roots from the stem that help with support. And these plants are referred to as halophytes, so which are salt tolerant plants. So that's it about coastal landforms. So next we're going to look at coastal opportunities and management.